Do you have a great story to tell? Hello, I'm Kevin Ferguson, president of KF Brand Studios, where we make videos that help brands articulate why they do business. Welcome to our YouTube channel. In this episode, you will hear how powerful storytelling can be to move people to action. Our guest is Julian Mocine-McQueen, co-founder of the Million Person Project, a worldwide organization that helps people harness the power of their personal story to support their work. Stay tuned.
The Million Person Project is a global project about love, storytelling, and connecting changemakers. What we do is help changemakers of all stripes and backgrounds tap into the power of their personal narrative and personal story and use those stories to support their work. So it may be speaking at a TED or a TEDx, keynoting, talking to investors or talking to funders if you're in a nonprofit realm. All the ways in which we talk about our work and need to inspire and move people to action, we help people do that, and we help them do it through personal story. People that I think about first when I think about folks that have come through our program is a woman named Caledonia Curry. She is an artist. She goes by the name Swoon in her art. She's a world-renowned street artist and has shown all over the world. Her art is very collaborative. She works in community. She is awesome. And she was awesome before she came to us. But she came to us because she had some context for her story that she wasn't sharing, and context for her work that she wasn't sharing. And it was about her life growing up in a heroin addicted household. And the trials and tribulations that came with that, the struggles that she went through because of that, and the way that it shaped who she is, shaped her relationship with her family and with the world. And for her, it was really important to begin to share that part of her story.
As an artist, I go by the name of Swoon, and I've done installations and community-based projects all over the place. What I don't really talk about very publicly, but I want to talk about today, is that I was born into a family of severely heroin-addicted parents. My very clearest childhood memory of my mother is being dragged terrified out into the street as she screamed up at the sky, believing the aliens were coming down to eat every last one of us. Why the pain? Why is this person suffering so deeply that they've not yet been able to heal? And what can we as a society do to help them heal? Myself as an artist, beginning to tell this story publicly is a first step.
Nobody knew that that was part of her story, and nobody knew that that was part of her art. And so for her, it was really a moment of stepping more into her own self and being more fully expressed through her art, but also just standing up and saying, this is part of who I am, and it's important that we address these issues and recognize what is behind issues like addiction, issues like the opioid crisis. What was really cool about Swoon's story is that she shared this story for the first time on a stage. At the end of her speech, someone from CNN came up to her and said, hey, can you turn that speech you just gave into an op-ed for CNN? She did that. They put it up on CNN. It went viral. It was shared all over. And since then, Swoon has been called upon to talk about this as an issue, and it's become more fully integrated into the way that she speaks about her art and to the way that people understand her art. So for her, it was a way to expand the context of her art and expand her impact and her reach, because she was sharing more fully about her own motivations, her own context, and the values that guide her work. This is the power of storytelling. When she stood boldly in her truth and told her story from an authentic place, it really touched her audience in the moment in a really profound way. And the way that we utilize storytelling is helping people to understand how they can be a part of your change, how they can be a part of your solution. So Swoon, since integrating this story into her work, has been called upon as a thought leader around issues like addiction and the pain that is behind addiction. And it's allowed her to, right now, for instance, she's doing work in Philadelphia in a community that's very experiencing the opioid crisis. And she's being able to be there and utilize her art to engage with people and to ideally and hopefully be a part of people's healing around this issue. That was not possible before because she wasn't sharing that context and she wasn't seen as somebody who had something to say about that issue. What we do in our work to help our speakers and the people that we work with open up is we really help people to reflect, first and foremost, to really reflect and think about what their motivations are. A lot of times we're asked as leaders, or if we're running an organization, why do you do this? And we just give the first answer that comes to mind. Oh, I learned about this issue a few years ago. It felt really important. What we do is help people to tap into their earlier context. what were some of the earlier experiences in your life that guided you towards a value around healthy communities, let's say? And we do that through a process of life mapping, and there's a number of other ways in which we get people to just take a moment to pause and think back. How did this value, how did this issue become important to you in an earlier context? What is the ways that it shows up in different parts of your life? Your work is one expression of your values, but it also might affect the way that you parent. It might affect the way that you show up as a friend. So we get people to think about all the context in which their values guide their decisions, and that helps them to root more deeply in their motivations, as opposed to just, I learned about it in a college class and now it's what I care about. One of the most exciting parts about our work is that we get to do it globally, and we've traveled all over the world. A few years back, we went to Uganda and we connected with somebody, a guy named Kaganga John. Kaganga John is awesome. He's a farmer originally and lives outside of Kampala in Uganda. And he is someone who really is trying to address the needs of his community in any way he can. So he's helped to build a technology center in the village that he's from so that people don't have to drive 2 hours to Uganda to use a computer. He's building a school as we speak in that community. He's done a ton of work around reforestation, around sustainable farming practices. And so it was really fun to work with Kaganga John because we were helping him to pull all of that work together through his story. So the things that he's doing are very diverse in terms of the type of work, but it's all connected through his story. It's all connected through his love for his community and his desire and ambition to be someone who's really creating a change and creating a difference in his community. So over the years, we've really worked with him around how to use his story. And for him, it's really important because so much of what he has to do is reach out to people around the world and use contacts outside of Uganda and people that come and visit, and how do you maintain those relationships and help people understand your vision. And his story has been a huge part of that. One of the coolest ways that we see our work change people is just people gaining a deeper understanding of what motivates them. Through the life mapping process and through other processes that we use, people really get to reflect and do the work to understand what their guiding values are. And most of us have a sense of that, but to really dig into that and to feel confident and to say, this is what moves me, that changes people. That changes people's understanding of how they move in the world and why. So it's not just about their work, but it's really about personal liberation and feeling more clear about who you are and what moves you. And a lot of the awesome feedback that we get is people that say, hey, I use this for the speech and that was great, but I tell you, I think about it all the time and it helps me understand what I want to do, and it helps me understand why I do what I do. And that is really gratifying, just to see that deep change that people have where they feel more fully expressed in who they are, and they feel more able to talk about who they are with confidence and know that, hey, this is my truth, and that's what matters. The interesting thing about our work is that we help people to speak about the things they're passionate about. We help people craft really powerful and effective speeches. But one of the really important byproducts of this process is that people often decide that they want to share stories that they've never shared before. And they will share a context or an experience of their life that they haven't shared. And that is a weight that they're walking around with. I think about Swoon and her story. This was a huge part of her life, something that has shaped her in any number of ways, and it was something she'd never talked about. And so the relief that she experienced when she actually got to share that story and said, I'm no longer hiding this. This is out in the public. This is something people know about. I can talk about it now. We see that over and over again. People sharing things they haven't shared, their shame that we carry as individuals when we're not sharing who we are fully. And so to help people find the story that will help them share that and to find the courage to do so is a real honor and a privilege. And it's a beautiful thing to witness when somebody shares something and you see and their body physically changes and their shoulders relax, right? When you can see people, that weight comes off of their shoulders. It's a really powerful thing to experience and see. I think about Anurag Gupta. Anurag is doing work around implicit bias, and he works with companies to explore implicit bias in the ways that racism is showing up and how they operate in ways that they might not know or be trying to do, but it affects people. And he has a really personal story about the role that race has played in his life as an immigrant, the trials and tribulations he's been through, and the shame that he felt, and the pain that he felt that brought him to the edge of suicide. And that was a story that he felt a lot of shame around, and he didn't know how it fit, and he didn't feel it was appropriate to share. And he cultivated that story, and he found the courage to share it. And he talked to us about the relief that he felt and the breath, the exhale that he experienced when he actually shared that context, because in some ways that was the most important context for his work. But he was trying to share his work without talking about that, right? And so when he actually leaned into that and spoke about that, shared that with people, and he felt like now they get me, they understand who I am, and they can actually understand my motivation behind this work, what connects it to me. And that's the power of story, is when people really understand your motivations. This isn't just a job. This is why I care. It's deeply personal to me, and that's why I moved to do this work. That's where connection comes from, and that's what's going to allow people to take action and want to take action around what you're doing, because they have a sense of who you are and why you do what you do. My story around why I'm so passionate about helping people find stories comes from when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, I grew up in a place called Humboldt County. It was a predominantly white community, and I'm not white, so me and my family lived up there as African Americans. And one year when I was about 11, we were called upon and asked to be a part of the Martin Luther King Day celebration, countywide celebration. So me and my brothers, Marcos and Nathan, put our heads together, and we came up with telling a story. And so we found an African-American folk tale from a long time ago, and we acted it out, and we each had our roles, and we told this story to this audience. And the reaction from the audience was incredible, but what was really powerful for me is sharing that story. For me, was a connection to my heritage as an African American, and a connection to a community that I actually didn't live in at the time, living in this white community, but it was also a way to connect out to the community that I was a part of. And it was so incredible to get the response from the folks that were at this Martin Luther King Day celebration. And in fact, like 6 months ago, I was back home. I'm 37 now, and I was back home, and a stranger stopped me in a store and said, "Hey, I remember when you and your brothers used to tell those stories." And I realize now that that was a really early moment for me of feeling the power of story to create connection. It was a connection for me to my heritage, to a community that I wasn't living a part of, and to the community that I was a part of in Humboldt County. And I've never forgotten the power of that. And so that wasn't the moment that I transitioned to story, but even today, I think about that as a moment where I really tapped into the power of it, and it still inspires me today. Recognizing that story is a place naturally where humans connect. It bridges communities naturally. That's what it does. And that's why it's so effective at helping people to speak about their work. When you're talking about your work and you're trying to get somebody involved, you're trying to create a bridge from what you're doing to your audience so that they can walk across that bridge and join you in your efforts. And that's the power of story.